Hello, and welcome to the Community IT Innovators Technology Topics Podcast, where we discuss nonprofit technology, cybersecurity, tech project implementation, strategic planning, and nonprofit IT careers. Find us at communityit.com.
Welcome, everyone, to the Community IT Innovators Podcast. My name is Carolyn Woodard, and I'm the host and the Outreach Director for Community IT. And today I am so excited to welcome new to the podcast, my friend Tiff Parker, who also works with Community IT. So Tiff, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for having me here. My name is Tiff Parker. I'm a IT business manager with Community IT, so I help clients with their strategic use of technology. I've got some experience in prior roles managing Google Workspace environments, and I also help out clients that have Google Workspace in their environments as well.
Great. So today we're going to talk about Google and get some tips from you. It's so easy to start in Google Workspace. You can set it up yourself. You can administer it yourself. So a lot of nonprofits are using Google Workspace, but I think to outsourced IT providers, it's not as common. So we have a bunch of experts on our staff who can help with Google Workspace and like yourself. And so I wanted to ask you, one of the things that we hear a lot of questions about are that Google Workspace has two ways to save your files. What's the difference, and what should you be using to share your files, and why?
In Google Workspace, every individual user account has what's called My Drive. And then so if you create any sort of spreadsheets, Google Docs, etc., those by default get saved into My Drive. Now, the thing and then from there, you can go ahead and share that with other users, share it externally, etc., depending on your settings. But ultimately, those files are attached to your individual user account. So if somebody were to depart the organization, becomes a little bit like, where did that file go? What do we do with that? So Google has introduced this other thing called shared drives, and that is more owned by the organization as a whole. So you can create a shared drive, you can add different people as members to the drive, and instead of saving your stuff in My Drive, you can save it in the shared drive. So it's really great if you're working and collaborating on things like projects, things that might kind of go on for a couple years or need to go beyond just that individual user account. So setting up shared drives, really great, helps with offboarding, transferring of information. But like I said, it creates this central repository for the organization for all those files.
Is it hard to set up the shared drive?
No, setting up shared drives is actually pretty easy. So you'll go into the administrator panel, and then from there will be a section to create shared drives and manage the members of them. So and then there's also different permission settings that you can enable for your organization. Do you want only IT administrator or like the administrators to be able to create shared drives, or do you want anybody to be able to create a shared drive? And so just kind of taking a little bit of time to think about what you want that architecture of that shared drive to look like, will definitely go a long way.
And so how would you learn how to set up the shared drive if you're not super technically oriented? Can you just Google it? Is there a legitimate place that you look on Google to find the instructions?
Google has some really great resources available in their documentation, really great step-by-step instructions that walk you through how to create those shared drives, how to manage some of the permissions on them as well, and how to assign members.
Great. That's good to know. We will include those links in the transcript. So if you're listening to this podcast, it will be in the transcript on the podcast or on our website, communityit.com. All right, so we have some other questions about Google Workspace. For example, we usually recommend that accounts always have multi-factor authentication on them for security. And that's where you enter your password, but then there's another step where maybe it gives you a message on your phone. There's a code from your phone you have to put in before you're able to fully access what you're logging into. So Google calls it something different, but is it the same?
So yeah, in Google, they refer to it as 2SV or two-step verification. And so that's another one of those important security measures that we recommend everyone implement for keeping their online accounts secure. So yeah, 2SV, two-step verification, but it's more or less the same thing as MFA or multi-factor authentication. Something you know and something that you have.
And you can set that up with the Google Authenticator or other authenticators, but we recommend having it on every login. So if you have an account, you should have some kind of second step authentication on that account. Is that correct?
Yep, absolutely. Because compromised accounts is one of the largest vectors we've seen for cybersecurity incidences. So it's an important step that you can take, kind of like locking your front door, and so we strongly recommend everybody enroll that.
And I think one of the kind of philosophical differences between Microsoft and Google is that because Google lets you do so much on your own, even if you don't have a lot of technical skills, you may not remember to require that for everyone in your organization. So making sure that somebody is owning your Google Workspace and doing the cybersecurity that you need is really important.
Yeah, and what we've found too in rolling out two-step verification is we'll have the users enroll them themselves. And once everybody is enrolled, then we can turn on enforcement for the entire organization. And then if you hire somebody later down the line, for example, as a part of their onboarding, they'll be prompted to set up that two-step verification during that onboarding process.
That's so clever. That's a really good idea. All right, so on to some more tips. I have heard about this, but I have never actually used Google Groups. And I believe that's something in Google Workspace that you can set up. So can you talk a little bit more about what it is and how people are using it at their nonprofits?
Many nonprofits have public-facing email addresses like donations@yourdomain.org or info@yourdomain.org. And those emails got to go somewhere. And sometimes, you can set them up as a user account. However, if you're on a paid Google Workspace plan, then that will cost money. But there's also this other feature called Google Groups, which is free. It comes included as a part of your Google Workspace subscription. And you can create these groups on here. So say you have a couple people in your development department that want to be receiving these donations notifications. You can create a Google group for donations@yourdomain.org and have multiple people be members of that. And then that way, if somebody were to email it or get a notification, all of the members of that group will receive it. And there's a whole bunch of other features that you can do with it as well. You can use it as kind of like an internal listserv. You can also use it for even kind of like a community organizing as well, kind of like emailing large groups of people. So that way it doesn't get caught in people's spam filters and whatnot. And the nice thing about that, like I mentioned, is that number one, it's free. You don't have to pay for a user. You don't have to pay for a user license for that. The second thing is that there's a security features as well. So if you have an individual, if you set up those email addresses like it's an individual user account, you can't really set up two-step verification on it because multiple people need to be able to access it. So it kind of leaves a little bit of a security risk there. But by using Google Groups, you don't really have that problem. All of those things can be delivered directly to the individual's inboxes.
Wow, that sounds so useful. Do clients use that, for example, for like a volunteer group or committees?
Yep, absolutely. So if you wanted to have one with like your board, you can do board@yourdomain.org and then add all of your board members as members to that group. And it's just one easy way for people to be able to communicate with each other. The other thing that's helpful about using Google Groups too is because if you decide to go and purchase additional services like cloud backups, advanced email security, et cetera, then you don't have to pay for that additional license on there too. So it helps with license management and cost management in the long term.
That's great advice for nonprofits because they're always looking for ways that they can do more with less. I know you had one more thing you were going to tell us about. That's another useful little tip for using Google Calendar.
A lot of times those that still have like brick and mortar, like office locations. You might have conference rooms in there. You might also have other resources that people share, like outreach equipment, thinking like projectors, maybe iPads or like mobile hotspots or something. And then so Google Calendar has this ability to set up resources that people can check out through Google Calendar. So if I need to use that conference room, what it will look like is when I'm creating my Google Calendar invite, there's a little tab that says rooms, etc. You can click on that and then you'll be able to see all of the different resources that are available during that time slot. So it's pretty helpful if you're all kind of coordinating and sharing things.
Yeah, I know a lot of organizations do still have an office, but it's really, really hybrid. So some people are in the office some days, 1 day a week or 1 day a month. Some of the organizations that I'm thinking about, they don't have an office anymore that's big enough for all of them. So coordinating those, who's using which desk when, that might be something that you could do through Google Calendar.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if you're using Google Calendar already or Google Workspace already, then the calendar feature is right there. And that's a feature of something you're already using. So that's always good for nonprofits to look out for. Well, thank you so much, Tiff. These were all great tips for us to use Google better at our nonprofits. I want to thank you so much for your time today. This was just really, really helpful.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Community IT does these free webinars and podcasts for our community, and we love sharing our knowledge and experience. If you have more questions or are having trouble with your IT at your nonprofit, please get in touch with us on our website, www.communityit.com, so we can start a conversation or schedule an assessment. Downloading any of our free resources there will get you signed up for our webinar reminders, and you can attend our next webinar in real time and ask our experts your own questions. If you love podcasts, please subscribe and leave us a rating to help others find this leadership resource for nonprofits.